Okay, ready to get a little mind-bending today?
Always up for that.
Well then, let's dive into the future of government. But we're not talking about those boring town halls.
Definitely not.
We're talking governance in the cloud.
Much more interesting.
Yeah, we're going deep on this one. We're diving into Prince Rams's article, The Future of Governance is in the Cloud. And it's a wild ride, let me tell you.
Wild in a good way,
Oh,
hopefully.
absolutely, in a good way.
Yeah.
But to unpack how technology and this whole decentralization thing can revolutionize how societies function.
You know, it's funny because when I hear Ramses talk about this, what strikes me is how he takes us all the way back to the very beginning of human organization to really set the stage here.
It's true. He starts way, way, way back with those hunter-gatherer societies, right?
Yeah.
And reminds us that for like basically forever in human history, we were in these small groups where things were pretty decentralized.
Yeah, no big hierarchy, just, collaboration, basically groups of people working together based on trust.
And then, bam, the agricultural revolution happens.
And we need to organize ourselves in a totally different way now.
Exactly. Now that we have these surpluses and these bigger populations that are more settled in one place.
And then that leads to the city-states, which eventually become these big nation-states that are still how we organize ourselves today.
It's crazy how we went from campfire chats to like these big international summits, you know.
Well, relatively speaking.
Yeah, well, in the blink of an eye,
Right.
evolutionarily speaking. But Ramses makes this point, like now we have the digital revolution happening, and it might actually be pushing us away from this top-down thing that's been going on for centuries.
Right, and I think he makes a really strong case that digital tools by their nature make it possible for power to be more spread out.
Well, think about the internet, right? I mean,
Mhm.
information can go anywhere in the world now. It crosses borders, and it doesn't matter who you are, you can get your hands on it.
Yeah. Suddenly, knowledge isn't held by just a few people.
And knowledge is power, right?
And on top of that, Ramses had this crazy stat in the article. He said, someone with a smartphone in a remote village today has more power in their hands than the U.S. president did a few years ago.
It just blows my mind.
It really does, and it shows you just how fast technology is growing. It's not even about how powerful a single computer is anymore. It's how easy it is for anyone to get that power and connect with people.
Yeah. And it's changing everything. We can already see it happening, too, with the whole peer-to-peer economy thing. Airbnb, Lyft, Etsy, they're all about connecting directly with people, no middleman.
It's true, and that's where I think this idea of social physics comes in. Using all the data we have to understand how people behave.
Okay, so hold on. Social physics.
Yeah.
It sounds cool, but what does it even mean? Like, what would that look like in real life?
So think about it like this. Imagine if we didn't use data to track us, but instead to help us. Like, what if we used it to build a city where people can walk more? Then we would have less traffic and pollution, right? Or imagine our devices could tell us if a disease was spreading and actually stop it before it becomes a pandemic.
So instead of Big Brother watching our every move, it's more like Big Helper.
Exactly. It changes how we think about data. Instead of asking how can we control people with this, we ask how can we help people and make things better.
Okay, I like where this is going. But let's be real for a second. There's always a downside. We can't just talk about this and pretend like there aren't any risks. Data privacy is a huge deal right now. Could this decentralization thing actually backfire and create some kind of dystopia where everything we do is tracked and someone is always watching?
That's the big question, isn't it? And I really appreciate that Ramses doesn't pretend like these concerns aren't real. He actually says very clearly that finding solutions that protect our individual freedoms has to be the top priority.
So it's all about balance, using tech for good,
Yeah.
but also making sure it doesn't get used against us.
Yes. And that's why I think he argues for such a completely new way to think about government. Like, what if we just use things like blockchain and smart contracts to rebuild it all from scratch?
Okay, blockchain. That's the thing I think a lot of us are still trying to wrap our heads around, right? Because we hear about it with cryptocurrency. But how does it even work for making like a whole digital society?
So blockchain is basically this digital ledger, right? And it's out there for anyone to see, but it's also incredibly secure. Like, you can't mess with it.
And that's what makes Bitcoin work, right?
Yeah, Bitcoin is built on it. But Ramses is saying we can use blockchain for a lot more than that. Like, imagine if instead of a physical constitution, we had a digital one.
So instead of some fancy document locked in a vault somewhere, all of the rules of society, the important stuff, is all in code that's just out there
Exactly. And no single person or government can change it.
because it's decentralized.
Right. And everything is completely transparent. Like anyone can look at it and see how it works, which makes it way more accountable than traditional systems.
But how do we make decisions,
Yeah.
right? In this digital world, do we have to vote on every single thing?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. So Ramses talks about DAOs, these decentralized autonomous organizations. Basically, imagine a self-governing organization where everything is controlled by these things called smart contracts that are on the blockchain.
Wait, smart contracts. Like, is that like a legal agreement, but it can, like, enforce itself?
Yeah, like a self-enforcing contract. Let's say we have a DAO that's in charge of a renewable energy grid for a community. All the rules are programmed into the DAO's smart contract, like how energy gets distributed, how profits are shared, even how decisions get made. And since it's all on the blockchain, it's all trackable, you can see exactly what's happening.
So does this mean we could move away from electing people and go to this direct democracy thing where everyone has a say, but it's all happening on the blockchain?
It sounds crazy, but that's what Ramses is suggesting. And he even goes a step further with this idea of quantum democracies.
Quantum democracies. Now that just sounds like an episode of Black Mirror. Hopefully a good one.
Right. So imagine if you weren't limited to just one society, one government. Ramses is saying that we could have all of these digital societies all existing at the same time in the cloud, and we could choose which ones we want to be part of.
So, like, I could choose my own government.
Yeah, basically. And it wouldn't matter where you lived in the real world. You could align yourself with communities that share your values and participate in their governance.
That's wild. So instead of being stuck with whatever my country decides, I could choose my own adventure, basically.
Exactly. Let's say you're really passionate about the environment, right? You could choose to delegate your vote on policies to an organization that focuses on sustainability.
That actually makes a lot of sense because the way we do it now, sometimes you just don't feel like anyone is really representing you or your views, you know. But if trust is everything in this new system, how do we know that these digital societies will actually do what's best for the people? Like, what's stopping someone from just manipulating the tech to get what they want?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering, because there's always that risk, right? I mean, how do we actually make sure this whole thing doesn't go sideways?
Well, you know, Ramses does say that there aren't any easy answers here, and I appreciate that. But he keeps coming back to the idea that we have to make sure these digital systems have safeguards built in from the
Oh, and
beginning.
I can't just trust the tech to work perfectly,
Correct.
right? Right. We have to remember that people are involved, and people can be, well, let's just say people are people. We're not always going to make the best choices, so we have to anticipate that.
So we need to make it transparent and have some oversight.
Exactly. And he uses this analogy of forking a constitution, which I thought was interesting.
Forking, like with a fork.
Well, it's a term from the open source software world, like when developers take existing code and create a new version of it, building on what's already there.
So you're saying we could take the best parts of the systems we already have and use that as a starting point, add in some blockchain, and experiment a little to see what works.
That's the idea. It's more about being flexible and adapting as we go rather than assuming we'll get everything right the first time.
It's definitely a different way of thinking about government, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Usually it feels like nothing ever changes, you know, like it's stuck in the past. But this sounds more dynamic, more responsive.
And that's what makes it so exciting. It's a chance to totally rethink how we function as a society. But of course, it's not going to be easy, and there are definitely going to be some bumps along the road.
So how do we do it? How do we actually navigate all of this responsibly? Because this isn't just theory. This is the future we're talking about.
You got it. And it's a big responsibility. We need to really be thoughtful about this, make ethical decisions, and be open to learning as we go. Technology can be amazing, but it can also be misused.
It's like everyone says, measure twice, cut once, right? Except we're talking about like the future of society here. No pressure.
Exactly. And that's why I think we need to involve more than just the tech people. We need philosophers, ethicists, historians, people who can think about the big picture and the consequences of our actions.
Tech is just a tool.
Yeah.
Right? It's up to us to decide how we use it.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
So, what kind of world do we want to create?
Right. It's up
Yeah.
to all of us to figure that out. So to everyone listening, we want to hear from you. What does your utopia look like? Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. It's been quite a journey.